Hi. Good morning, SwitchPoint. I'm really happy to be here with you guys. My name is Monica Gillette. I am a dancer, a choreographer, and a co-creator of the project BrainDance. Yeah. BrainDance was an interdisciplinary research project between dancers, scientists, and people who have Parkinson's. It was created and occurred in Freiburg, Germany last year, and was a special collaboration between the State Theater and the university. Behind me are Tommy and Muriel, and they're engaging in some of the research material, some of the movement material that came out of this project. The starting point for this project was to ask the question, if dancers are experts in controlling, manipulating, executing, performing movement, then what could be discovered when dancers were partnered with scientists and people with Parkinson's to question movement and what happens when you gradually lose control over it? So we knew from the beginning that we were interested in a three-way discussion, a three-way collaboration. So this was one that would be process-based, about research, and non-hierarchical. So we have examples before us of how dance and science has experimented and partnered together, and dance has been offered to people with Parkinson's for about 15 years now. And of course, science has been researching Parkinson's for quite a long time, but rarely has there been a three-way collaboration where the expertise of all sides could be valued. One way that this manifests for us was that the people with Parkinson's were not patients, but partners. So I think we can all get a picture of what scientific research looks like, but artistic research is a bit more mercurial. It's a little bit hard to place. So the knowledge that dancers possess is something that I call a bit of a silent knowledge. And when we go into the studio, we're working with years of training that took time to cultivate, and we're working with choreographic tools and improvisation tools. We're looking for meaning in movement, but typically it's applied more for a performance. It's for entertainment, for virtuosic viewing. But Mia Habib and I, who's the other choreographer and co-creator in this project, Mia and I were interested to discover how these tools could maybe be applied in an interfield and interpopulation questioning process. So we were curious how scientists and possibly society could also benefit from this science or silent knowledge, dancer's knowledge. So rather than trying to create a hypothesis or something to prove the way maybe science would, we decided to create a 4-track research design. So we didn't really know how these 4 tracks would dialogue or interplay with each other. We just knew we wanted 4 points of research to discover and question along the way. So the first track was to offer weekly dance classes for people with Parkinson's. It was discovered that dance can help Parkinson's about 15 years ago in the Mark Morris Dance Company in Brooklyn, New York. This has since spread to a nationwide program here in the States, and it's begun to jump into several countries worldwide. For the purposes of our project, we decided to offer these dance classes in a contemporary art museum in Freiburg, Germany, because we really wanted to take the physical journey for them out of the therapist's office, out of the doctor's office, and to place it in a completely different setting. We had no idea how much this would mean to them until one of the participants said to us, "It's so amazing that they opened the doors for us." And in that moment, we understood how isolating a movement disorder can be sometimes in society. The second track of research was theoretical meetings. So the dancers had a series of meetings with experts in the field of neurotechnology, neuroscience, philosophy, and we questioned what was coming up in this process. One thing we discovered is that we use the same terminology sometimes, but mean totally different things. So for example, a neurosurgeon would talk about embodiment as, will his patient embody the chip that he placed inside of the head in the brain, so deep brain stimulation, will the patient embody this external chip as part of their embodiment, a part of their physicality. For us, embodiment was to physicalize a concept, to physicalize an idea, to embody a question, perhaps. The third track of research was physical thinking. So when Mia and I started this project, we realized we were doing a lot of talking. We were doing interviews, going to the hospitals, meeting neuroscientists, speaking with people with Parkinson's, talking a lot, a bit like what we're doing here, but we missed our instruments, our bodies. That's how we research. We research through moving. So we decided to commit to a daily process of going into the studio every day and physically questioning what was happening. And that's a bit what Muriel and Tommy are doing right now, and I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute. The fourth track was to have open houses. So this was part outreach, part public think tank. We weren't interested to get up there and show our findings and to show what we discovered. We were interested to show what we were questioning. So to really invite the public to get inside of the questions with us, and to question movement disorder with us, and to question what it means to live in society with a disease. So I want to go back to physical thinking. One of the intersections that dancers have with people with Parkinson's is the level of focus that is needed to move. So when we want to, as dancers, when we want to execute a movement, we scan through a series of tools and techniques and tricks. We use images. We try to pull up everything that we've found in our training to control movement, and sometimes to change something that's soft to something that's hard, to make something slow, to make something dynamic. And for some people with Parkinson's, if they say have the symptom of freezing, when they're blocked, they need to find other ways to bypass the blockage to find the way to move. So this is one intersection. Parkinson's is a series of symptoms. There's a wide spectrum, and not everyone has all the same symptoms. So you might have tremor, you might have freezing, you might have rigidity or slowness of movement. When Mia and I went into the studio, we wanted to physically experiment with these symptoms to try to understand them from a new angle. So we used a choreographic tool, which is called a movement score, to question the symptoms. Now, a score is simply a set of rules that you create to improvise inside of. So that's what Tommy and Muriel are doing right now. They're working with the task or the score of slowness. And to break it down a bit and make it less mysterious, I'm going to talk about the 4 steps that they're working with inside of this. So the first step is to select a movement. This might be to raise a hand. This might be to sit down on the ground, just to simply say, this is the movement I want to do. The second step is to visualize that movement. So you see yourself doing it, or you imagine as if you're doing it. So you feel your body doing it almost to the point of movement, but no movement. The third step is to analyze it. So to physically scan your body and analyze, what do I need to do to accomplish this task? If I'm going to sit down on the ground, perhaps I need to shift my weight. I need to bend. I need to bend my knees. I need to reach my arm. So really isolating and analyzing physically what needs to happen. Now, all these first 3 steps are done simply in the thoughts. No movement has happened yet. The 4th step is to execute the movement. But because one of the symptoms of Parkinson's can be that the movement shrinks, so the body gets a bit smaller, the steps can get a bit smaller, the voice can get smaller, handwriting can get smaller, we decided to create this caveat that you could only move 50%, so only half of what you wanted to do. I'm just going to give a bit of space so we can take a look at what they're doing. So one of the things that we learned about this movement score is that it's teachable. In the last year, I've taught it to some doctors, caretakers, researchers, medical students, and it's offered them a totally different angle to look at movement disorder and to look at the experience, to try to get close to the experience that people might have if they have a movement disorder. We also used this research material in the open houses that I mentioned earlier. So present in these open houses were the people with Parkinson's for our dance class. So one way to abbreviate Parkinson's disease is to say PD. I've reappropriated it to Parkinson's dancers. And we also had some of the scientists from the university. We had a curious public. Sometimes we had relatives showing up who had had a family member with Parkinson's who perhaps they didn't have the courage to speak to about it, or in one case, a woman's grandmother had the disease and she had since passed away, and she wanted to understand what was that my grandmother was dealing with. So in these open houses, we would show this material, and it became a nonverbal space that everyone had to reflect on together. So the great thing about dance is that there are no words. So if you want to speak about dance, you have to find the language to talk about it. So everyone present used their experience or the field of research that they were engaged with to discuss Parkinson's from a new direction. One of the Parkinson's dancers, I asked her, what can we do with this? And she said, scientists don't have a public. As Parkinson's people, we don't have a public, but you have a public. You have a platform. And we took this to heart. What we quickly learned is that by putting this research material, this movement material on our bodies and showing it to the public, we created a distance. So we created a type of projection space and a distance from the people who had the disease. And it was on us. We became the objects. And one way to understand why this is important, another Parkinson's dancer told us that in the city, at least once a week, someone accuses her of being drunk. She has dyskinesia, that's her symptom. She has a hypermobility. So people will call her out and say really rude things. Get yourself together. Why are you drunk at this time of hour? And luckily she's a strong woman, and she'll say, I'm not drunk, I have Parkinson's. But what was interesting is that in these open houses, because this movement material was on us, we became the object. So for a moment, we gave them a gift of invisibility. Typically, when we're talking about marginalized people in the population, we're talking about giving them visibility and giving them a voice. But what was important is in these moments, they could step back and take a space from being looked at as to have pity for, and actually they could be experts. So they could look at what we were doing, and they could be the people who could talk about it the best, because they lived with it. So in this moment, we understood ourselves as mediators, that we could be mediating for them. So for a moment in these open houses, everyone had a role change. So we watched people being able to comment and question Parkinson's because it was on us and not on the people suffering from it. And over the arc of the evenings, we saw the public being able to talk to each other in a new way. So in the beginning, the questions would come to us on stage. We were the performers in the center, and we would answer the questions. But by the end of the night, people had courage to ask the questions to each other. And this was really exciting. So the public settings provided a more holistic view of Parkinson's. Normally, doctors and scientists have a more technical view. They have to measure and change dosage of medication. They have to make decisions about whether to put deep brain stimulation into their patient. But in these settings, we were able to offer a more complex view of what it's like to live with Parkinson's in society. So it brought forward a qualitative perspective to complement what is normally a quantitative perspective. So dancers rehearse. We go into the studio and we practice, and we practice, and we practice for years, all the time. And what we understood in this project is that we were rehearsing the stamina together between the fields. We were rehearsing the stamina to be uncomfortable and to be vulnerable and to step into something we weren't normally doing. So it gave us the chance to look out of our own perspective and our own bubble of research and to try to look at it something from a different angle. So we were rehearsing being comfortable with something unknown. We've now expanded this model of research to include more dancers and more scientists, and we've also added junior scientists. So we've added students of medicine, psychology, philosophy, neuroscience, mathematics, and we've started to offer them their own dance classes. So now they're starting to dance their research, so to speak. They're starting to physicalize their research questions and trying to see them from the point of moving their body before thinking and questioning all the time. One thing that was exciting about this project is that we could change the roles and hierarchy, which is typical in a doctor-patient role. We had one medical student that was coming to all the dance classes for the Parkinson's dancers, and she said that she's now going to be a different doctor. We also have a junior scientist that we're working with right now, and he said he spent so much time looking at data and theory, and now he is seeing the human again. One of the things, I want to go to some questions that came out of this project specifically through a starting point of dance. So the first is, through dance, we began to question, what does it actually feel like to have a movement disorder? Can physical thinking help us better understand our research? Can there be an embodied questioning process with other fields? So we began to question, can designers, developers, marketers, CEOs begin to question their material differently through an embodied questioning process? Can movement be a common ground for all disciplines to meet? So can we take off our hats, our roles, our titles? Can we all meet in a place of physical questioning? Because we can start at a ground zero then. We all have a body. Take off the titles, move, question together. Can dance research contribute to the quality of life? So what I mean by this is that there's several participants, there's several Parkinson's dancers that we're working with that are now starting to understand that a cure might not come in their lifetime. So can dancers work with scientists to improve the quality of life while living with this disease? So I want to close with just a short excerpt of a documentary film that we made about this project. It's a very short excerpt from one of the Parkinson's dancers who actually, one of his key symptoms is slowness.
Ich finde ganz toll die Wissenschaft und Tanz zusammen. Und dass Tanz mit mir etwas zu tun hat und die Gemeinschaft und zu erfahren, wie die anderen reagieren an den Medikamenten, das finde ich ganz toll. Und das hat für mich mehr mit meinem zukünftigen Leben als die Entwicklung der Neurologie selbst.
Thank you, Tommy and Marielle, and thank you.